I recognize the Honorable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, honorable members, people of Montserrat, I rise to present the budget contribution for Vote 30 from the Ministry of Agriculture, Lands, Housing, the Environment, Youth Affairs, and Sports for the financial year 2026 to 2027. But, Madam Speaker, before I address the numbers, I want to ground this contribution in something my father, Montserrat's fourth national hero, used to say. Madam Speaker, he had a vision of what success looked like for this island. He said that every Montserratian should own their own home. Every Montserratian should drive their own car. And the women, Madam Speaker, especially the women of Montserrat, should be financially independent enough to always dress well and walk proud in their high heels. Just like Mr. Sector, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, that was his vision. And he carried a fire fueled by an undeniable sense of pride to make his vision a reality for all Montserratians. Madam Speaker, ironically, the first ministry my father served in is the very same ministry I represent today. I'm here today to say that fire, that pride has not gone out. It burns in my passion to elevate this nation and in the work of the ministry every single day. Madam Speaker, when we are on the verge of planting again in the exclusion zone, when we sign a letter of intent for an export agreement with Canadian partners, when we put a young athlete on a plane to compete at the World Championships, when we hand the keys of a new housing unit to a person in Drummond's, we are saying to the people of Montserrat, we refuse to settle. We refuse to accept dependency as our destiny. Madam Speaker, Vote 30 of this budget, totaling EC 11.8 million, is a budget of action. It is a budget that reflects the work already done and the ambitions still ahead. And I intend to walk this House to what we have achieved, what this budget funds, and where we are going. Agriculture and food sovereignty, the regional crisis we must confront. Madam Speaker, I begin with agriculture because it is the foundation upon which nations are built. The CARICOM food import bill now exceeds US $6 billion annually. In the OECS, we import up to 90% of the food we consume. Madam Speaker, I'm starting with this context so that persons listening understand that Montserrat is not unique in this situation. The World Food Programme's 2025 Caribbean survey found that 3.2 million people across the region are food insecure, with 94% of those respondents reporting the issues of higher food prices and 30% of those people skipping meals as a result. And Madam Speaker, it is getting worse. The United States, from which the Caribbean sources 70% of its imported goods, approximately 44% from Montserrat, has imposed tariffs that have hit our shelves. Saltfish, for example, Madam Speaker, is up 25%. What that means is that every trip to the supermarket is a reminder of what happens when you depend on others to feed your people. That is, Madam Speaker, when you have little to no control of part of the value chain, and in other words, have no food sovereignty. And Madam Speaker, if tariffs were not enough, the US-Israel war on Iran and the ongoing disruptions of the Strait of Hormuz have triggered what the International Energy Agency has called the greatest global energy security challenge in history. Oil surged past $100 a barrel. Gas prices have risen by 30%. But, Madam Speaker, it is not just fuel. Nearly half of the world's traded urea, the world's most widely used fertilizer, transits the Strait of Hormuz. The World Food Programme has warned that an additional 45 million people worldwide could be pushed into acute hunger because of rising food, fuel, and shipping costs. CARICOM Acting Secretary General recently told the FAO that our Caribbean economies remain highly exposed to global shocks transmitted through energy markets, food systems, and international supply chains. Madam Speaker, shipping disruptions, rising freight rates, increased insurance costs, all of this is hitting our shores. This is no longer a theoretical discussion about food sovereignty. This is a national security imperative. Every pound of food we grow here in Montserrat is a pound that we do not have to import to a supply chain, Madam Speaker, that we ultimately have no control. So what has this ministry delivered? Madam Speaker, when I assumed this portfolio in late 2024, I identified three fundamental challenges: insufficient accessible agricultural land, a predominance of part-time farming limiting year-round production, and an aging farmer population with too few new entrants. I said then, and I say again now, food sovereignty focuses on local production, ecological sustainability, and social and economic justice, as opposed to just simply stockpiling imported food. That is not rhetoric, Madam Speaker. That is policy, and here are the results. In this fiscal year, Madam Speaker, the Department of Agriculture recorded 97,916 pounds of vegetables and ground provisions produced by the people of Montserrat. Madam Speaker, that is the highest output recorded in at least 5 years of Statistics Department data, 57% above the 2019 pre-COVID baseline of 62,385 pounds, and surpassing the previous COVID-induced peaks of 96,000 pounds set in 2021. That is nearly 36 pounds more food coming out of Montserratian soil than just 5 years ago. We also produced 30,000 pounds of broiled meat and recorded fish landings of over 17,000 pounds in the first 2 quarters alone. This is food grown, raised, and caught right here in Montserrat. To put that in context, Madam Speaker, according to our own national accounts, agriculture contributes under 1% of GDP. Our food imports run at approximately 17 million per year and rising, with meat alone accounted for over 3 million and vegetables and fruit another 3 million. The gap between what we produce and what we import, Madam Speaker, is large, but we are closing it step by step. Madam Speaker, our extension officers conducted over 2,007 outreach visits to farmers, exceeded our annual target of 1,500 by more than a third. That is not a department sitting behind desks, Madam Speaker. That is a department and its minister in the fields, on the farms, working alongside the people we serve. The Agricultural Development Programme, Madam Speaker, this was backed by 1 million in ECCB funding. Although I admit that it was late, but is now fully operational and implemented in only the last 2 quarters of the fiscal year, it has directly assisted 25 farmers and 2 fishers. But let me break that down for the House, Madam Speaker, because the details matter. We have spent to date 41,000 for land clearing, our most popular program, and asked for our farmers. However, Madam Speaker, several applications under this program are still pending due to the increased workload generated by this very administration, resulting in a backlog of work for heavy equipment operators that are fully engaged in many of the other projects. Madam Speaker, in the beginning of this journey, I also openly promised to negotiate to bring over 50 acres of private-owned land into productive use. I am pleased to say, however, that while we were unable to acquire the lease directly due to legal issues, the outcome has been even more organic. The proprietor has leased land directly to our farmers on an individual basis, and for that, I would just like to say thank you to him. Madam Speaker, he knows who he is. I won't mention his name here today. Under the same land clearing project that I would have mentioned before, Madam Speaker, we have actually cleared substantial acreage in that area and others, providing our farmers there with the infrastructure and the land access they need to produce. And Madam Speaker, allow me to just highlight something that makes me deeply proud. Among the farmers now working that land are 2 women who have left their previous employment to become full-time farmers. They are not part-time, Madam Speaker. They are not weekend gardeners. They have committed their livelihoods to the soil, and they are now, and I would argue, among our top producers. That is the kind of transformation we are pursuing, Madam Speaker. That is food sovereignty in action. Moving on, Madam Speaker. We invested $46,335 in infrastructure. That includes 2 hoop houses to expand poultry farming and 5 greenhouses to expand protected agriculture. We invested $73,395 in access. Those are the farm roads in Blake's Estate, Duck Pond, Silver Hills, so that the crop and livestock farmers can actually get their produce to the market. And Madam Speaker, we invested $37,965 in consumable inputs. That is our fence wire, fertilizer, rat bait, the essentials that make the difference between a harvest and a loss. And Madam Speaker, I want this House to appreciate something. The Agricultural Development Program, including the land clearing, the infrastructure, the farm roads, only commenced in the 3rd quarter of the fiscal year. That means the record-breaking production we are reporting, 97,916 pounds, the highest in 5 years, was achieved before the program even had half a year of implementation. The full impact of this investment, Madam Speaker, is still ahead of us. When this program has had a full 12 months to work, I expect that the numbers will be even more impressive. Madam Speaker, these gains in production have not happened in a vacuum. They have been supported by deliberate policy choices, including the government's soft loans program, which Honourable Premier spoke to about yesterday. For years, Madam Speaker, our farmers and our fishers found themselves locked out of traditional financing. Historically, financial institutions were reluctant to take on the perceived risk of agriculture and fisheries, leaving some of our most productive citizens without a pathway to capital they needed to grow their operations. This government, Madam Speaker, said that that was unacceptable. We designed the soft loan program precisely to close that gap, to inject capital into the productive economy, and to create a real avenue of access for the men and women who feed this nation. And Madam Speaker, it is telling, and it is a matter of pride for this ministry, that the majority of applicants under the program are our fishers. That is what practical, targeted support looks like. That is what a government that understands its productive sector does. On top of this, Madam Speaker, I am pleased to say that the ministry, in partnership with CARICAD, has produced a 3-year medium-term agricultural transformation strategy. Madam Speaker, this strategy was approved by Cabinet within the last 2 weeks, and it aligns our sector with regional modernization goals and streamlines milestones for the department over the next 3 years. The milestones and the timelines in the strategy aim to keep us on track and pointed in the same direction while being rooted in decisions that are data-backed and evidence-based. Madam Speaker, at this point, I would also like to say that I am committed to using all resources available to us, local and abroad, to get this island moving. In that light, I want to say a special thanks to Mr. Franklin Michael, or Frankie Michael as we so affectionately call him, who was a past director and also past permanent secretary of our own government, who now works at CARICAD, and I want to thank him for so graciously leading and aiding us in that new strategy. Madam Speaker, in addition to this, we have initiated work on a farmer registration system. This will become the foundation for a digital agricultural platform that will allow us to target incentives, track production, further adding to our evidence-based decisions about where to invest. At this point, Madam Speaker, if you would allow me, I would also like to put on record for any new or existing farmers that are unaware, as part of our outreach and direct assistance, we have established a needs request form that allows producers to access targeted assistance from the Department of Agriculture. Madam Speaker, rather than a one-size-fits-all approach, producers can now identify their specific needs, whether it be technical advice, pest management, input supplies, or land clearing, which seems to be the most popular ask from our farmers. Madam Speaker, we also acknowledge the concerns raised by our producers and have established a crop protection team to address the challenges posed by goats and other pests that are adversely affecting our harvest. I will admit here that this is painstaking, ongoing work, but it is essential if our farmers are to see the fruits of their labor and maximize their production. Again, Madam Speaker, I will put another plug here for the ministry and go on record to say that persons who are affected by loose livestock, feral animals, pests, please call the ministry and the crop protection team will respond. Madam Speaker, you have heard me talk about the greenhouses under the Women and Youth in Agriculture program here in this very house before. I am pleased to say that we have received the documentation for the 4 greenhouses, which should be on island shortly. The cold storage facility, which is a part of this project also, has already been delivered. Madam Speaker, these greenhouses will provide targeted, sheltered production on specific crops. Madam Speaker, what we have done is that we're using the data from our importation to build business plans around these greenhouses. So when we assign a greenhouse to a farmer, we are not just giving them a sheltered production area. We are giving them a business that will thrive from a market we know exists based on our importation data. And to expand our market further, in December of 2025, we signed a letter of intent with Northern Connection Distribution Limited, the Messiah Group, and the Canadian consortium partners to advance agriculture export development. Madam Speaker, CEO Ryan Messiah toured our agricultural lands across Lower and Upper Blakes, Duck Pond, Waterworks Estate, Corkhill, and St. George's. This LOI, Madam Speaker, covers good agricultural practices, Phase 1 exports to Canada through Antigua, local job creation, integrated renewable energy for agricultural processing, and strengthen international partnerships. Madam Speaker, this is where I want to take the future of production in Montserrat. It is my belief that if we continue along the trajectory of increased production, that agriculture can serve as even the subsidizing agent for our access. And by that, Madam Speaker, I mean subsidizing means of transportation like the ferry to make it economically viable. Madam Speaker, what I mean when I say that is that when we don't have persons filling the seats on the ferry, we'll fill the ferry with local produce headed to islands like Antigua and maybe even St. Martin. This is my vision, but one that I think can become a reality since the data, Madam Speaker, exists to show that there's a viable market for our produce within the region. Furthermore, a sizable part of our capital budget comes from our development partners. We are working with the Caribbean Development Bank through the Basic Needs Trust Fund to expand access to farmlands and to develop some level of processing capacity on island. Madam Speaker, there is a real possibility of a chicken processing facility being funded through this partnership. This would be transformative for our poultry sector and for the availability of locally produced poultry on Montserrat. Madam Speaker, the department's revenue performance reached 90.3% of target, EC 83,000 against 92,000, with plant propagation exceeding its revenue target at 109%. This is a department and its producers, Madam Speaker, delivering results within our means. Madam Speaker, I believe the reason our farming community is responding to increased production is very simple. We listen to them. In July 2025, we launched the Farmers, Fishers, and Agro-Processing Needs Survey at the Montserrat Cultural Center. It was attended by 70 stakeholders, but responded to by over 150 persons. That survey, like our town hall engagements, has given us the evidence base to allocate resources where they are most needed. Madam Speaker, this ministry has also conducted at least 4 ministerial town hall engagements each year, and those are separate and apart from the United Alliance town hall meetings. That is more direct stakeholder engagement than any government before us. Madam Speaker, the policies we create, therefore, are the policies of the people, because they are born from these direct conversations with the people they affect. When farmers tell us what they need and we respond, they produce. Madam Speaker, this island lost up to 90% of its cultivated land to the Soufriere Hills volcano. But we are not accepting that as permanent. We are building back, acre by acre, farm by farm, farmer by farmer. And Madam Speaker, the numbers we are producing speak for themselves. Leading regionally and internationally. Madam Speaker, since we don't think our local performance is enough, our representation is taking us and our small island onto the global stage. Madam Speaker, as chairman of the OECS Council of Ministers of Agriculture, I have had the privilege of helping to shape the regional response to the region's food crisis. Last month, I represented Montserrat and the OECS at the Afro-Caribbean Investment Summit 2026 in Abuja, Nigeria. This was a gathering of over 2,000 delegates, targeting a combined market value of US $40 trillion. I delivered remarks on food sovereignty and Afro-Caribbean cooperation and participated in a panel on agriculture and food security. I was joined on this trip by fellow OECS ministers and our Director General, Dr. Didicus Jules. Madam Speaker, the economic rationale for the Afro-Caribbean Agriculture Cooperation is compelling. Trade between our two regions currently represents less than 1% of total trade. A CARICOM private sector organization study found that US $1.3 billion could be saved annually by diversifying our import sources with African nations offering goods at roughly half the current price of our imported goods. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, Africa recognizes the Caribbean could be an essential hub for agro-processing and transshipment, since, although Africa produces a lot, they lack the level of agro-processing some of the Caribbean islands possess. Madam Speaker, I may be very optimistic, but I envision Montserrat and its diaspora being the African Caribbean hub to the UK. This little island once produced limes and lime juice and other goods that were labeled and sold on the UK market as Montserrat products. We can achieve this again. Madam Speaker, to note, Nigeria has almost 250 million people. 1% of Nigeria therefore represents a market of 2.5 million people. That exceeds the total population of the OECS islands. Trade with Africa, Madam Speaker, therefore offers a unique opportunity for our producers to expand into and trade with what is currently being described as the fastest growing consumer market worldwide. Madam Speaker, also worthy of mention is Afrexim Bank, an African bank. They are providing up to $5 billion in trade finance to make this corridor work. Some islands like St. Kitts and Nevis, Madam Speaker, are already taking advantage of this opportunity to improve their access and streamline trade between Africa and the Caribbean, or what we now term Africa and its diaspora. And Madam Speaker, that relationship that we have built with St. Kitts and Nevis should also help Montserrat whenever that trade route is set up. Madam Speaker, Montserrat has a population of 4,325 people. But when our ministers are invited to give their input on world trade, when we chair the OECS Agriculture Council of Ministers, when we sign export agreements with Canadian partners, we are not a small island. We are an island that understands building our network, leveraging trade and development partners. We understand expanding our markets to access economies of scale. Madam Speaker, we then become a nation with a vision, and the world starts taking notice. So what does this budget fund for agriculture? Madam Speaker, Program 301, Agricultural Services, is allocated EC 2.3 million in recurrent expenditure. The ECCB-funded Agricultural Development Program brings an additional 764,800 in capital. Mali activities funded at 323,600 supports direct farming programs and field operations. Madam Speaker, key strategies supported by this budget include strengthening the production of select crops, livestock, poultry, and fish via research, outreach, training, and targeted incentives. The budget also emphasized improving access to farmland through upgrades to the agricultural infrastructure, promoting high-quality food products with the repair of the abattoir equipment after many years of neglect, and also developing new partnerships to facilitate additional food processing facilities. Furthermore, it underscores the importance of marine resource conservation, advancing this goal to enhance data collection and marine spatial planning. Youth Affairs and Sports, Madam Speaker. The investment in our young people. Madam Speaker, I turn now to what I would love to be the most transformative element of this budget. Program 307, Youth Affairs and Sports. This program receives EC 2.1 million for this budgetary cycle, making it the second largest program in the ministry behind only agriculture. Madam Speaker, this government believes that investing in our young people is not a luxury. It is one of the most important investments we can make for the future of this island. Madam Speaker, of that allocation, EC 880,000 goes to personal emoluments, meaning we now have dedicated full-time staff running youth and sports programs. Madam Speaker, I want the public to remember that before John Osborne and this UA government, this department operated with no director for what I've been told has been over 4 years, with no oversight of even their own finances. Now the Department of Community, Youth and Sports Services, under the directorship of Ann Thomas, has been redesigned to reflect our commitment to community development, youth advancement, and sports as a viable career pathway. Madam Speaker, on continuing the breakdown, EC 676,000 is allocated to program production and promotion. This continues our HYPE program, the new apprenticeship program, the recently introduced reintegration into society for ex-offenders program, and within that line sits roughly EC 100,000 dedicated to the summer school program. These programs give our young people structured, enriching activities, keeping them engaged, developing their skills, safeguarding them while parents are at work, and reinforcing the message that this government sees them, values them, and is investing in their future. Madam Speaker, EC 190,000 in subvention supports Sporting Association, but I will be very candid with this House. We submitted a new spend request to increase the sporting subventions because our associations need more. Madam Speaker, sports have been a major topic throughout this island, but however, Budgetary constraints meant that this request could not be accommodated in this cycle. But Madam Speaker, I would say the need for increase has not gone away. I will continue to negotiate and explore every avenue to fund the needs of our athletes. Therefore, for now, I am asking our people, the private sector, the diaspora, and the community to contribute to the funding of and/or the participation in our sporting programs. Short, Madam Speaker, get involved in our village leagues. We regularly have organized village basketball leagues. Rounders has grown in popularity enough to have established its own league. And Madam Speaker, something I know that you'll be personally passionate about, perhaps a full-time village cricket league formed in the future. And Madam Speaker, we don't just lead by example, we lead through direct involvement. I am an honorary member of the Montserrat Motorsports Association. I recently became a general member of the Montserrat Cricket Association because I am enthusiastic about collaborating with community members and various associations to plan, fundraise, and coordinate these very events. Additionally, Madam Speaker, regarding participation, the Honourable Donaldson Romeo challenged me to a 100-meter race at this year's Easter Monday Relay. Madam Speaker, he's smiling, but he ultimately withdrew from that race. But we have agreed to a special event for next year. And Madam Speaker, the reason why I'm mentioning it here today is so that he doesn't back out again. But I am pitching to him that we should potentially use this as a fundraising initiative for sports. But Madam Speaker, I'm going to say, and I'm going to put on record, that I will not lose that race. By the way, Madam Speaker, cricket returned after a 4-year hiatus. And I will say it has been 7 years since the Montserrat Easter Monday Relay has been run until now. Madam Speaker, I won't take full credit for everything that I've mentioned just now. Many of these initiatives flow directly from the consultations that inform the national sports and recreational policy. I am pleased to say that the policy department has reported that their process is almost complete. All stakeholder engagements have been concluded, and one final review meeting remains before the document is submitted to Cabinet for full approval. Madam Speaker, Montserrat has never had a finalized national sports and recreational policy. This government will deliver one. I also want to thank the Honourable Paul Lewis. I know he's not here today, and we wish him a speedy recovery. I messaged him early this morning, so he told me his initial tests have come back good. But I really wanted to thank him because through him, his team actually participated in the stakeholder engagement process for that policy. We see collaboration as vital to advancing Montserrat, and I commend everyone who contributed. And Madam Speaker, I will say now, especially Mr. Liston Skerritt, who deserves an honorary mention as the former director and acting PS for actually taking his personal time to making sure that the policy got moving again. Madam Speaker, to continue, we have EC 160,000 in professional services of this vote, which funds coaching, training and development. EC 100,000 also covers our sporting facilities. EC 20,900 in grants and contributions supports our organizations directly. Madam Speaker, I would say that our athletes are actually proving what Montserrat can do. So let me tell you what our investment, although some may say little, is actually producing. Sanjay Weeks became the first Montserratian to compete at the World Athletics Championship, which was held in Tokyo last September. He ran 11.08 seconds in the men's 100-meter, but his personal best stands at 10.8. From an island of only 4,325 people, Madam Speaker, to the biggest stage in world athletics. Madam Speaker, our football team achieved a 1-0 victory over Belize in the 2026 FIFA Cup qualifying round, with Mark Rogers scoring in the second minute. Under head coach Angus Eve, we are fielding a competitive squad and staying in the World Cup hunt. Our cricket team, Madam Speaker, secured its first ever win at the LICB Senior Men's Tournament in October 2025. Wicketkeeper batsman Joshua Grant was selected for the Leeward Islands Hurricanes. In basketball, Madam Speaker, Jordan Ryan was signed to Angelo State Rams in the NCAA Division II. But before that, Madam Speaker, in the NJCAA, he made the NJCAA second All-American team, stamping Montserrat's name into basketball internationally. These are not abstract statistics. These are our children carrying the Montserrat flag on the world stage. And every dollar we invest creates more of them. Madam Speaker, as such, we continue the funding of repairs and upgrades to the multipurpose sports center. We see $480,000 in capital allocation this year, which will give our athletes the facility they deserve. And the youth program, Madam Speaker, at EC $150,000 continues to provide structured development opportunities. Madam Speaker, we are making the best of the allocations until we can expand funding for the department and our sporting associations. On to housing, Madam Speaker. Safe, adequate housing for all. Madam Speaker, housing is not just a policy area for this ministry. For many Montserratians, it is the single most pressing concern in their daily lives. Too many of our residents continue to face housing insecurity. Although this government has lowered the duties on construction material, construction costs remain high. The housing wait list remains long, and families across this island are still living in conditions that fall short of what any Montserratian deserves. But we are delivering, and I want this House to hear the numbers because they represent real help to families. This year, Madam Speaker, the Housing Unit awarded 18 home improvement grants to vulnerable households to bring the homes of our most vulnerable residents to a decent standard. Indoor bathrooms, indoor kitchens, structural repairs, the basics of dignity that no Montserratian should have to live without. We awarded 5 financial assistance grants of EC $40,000 each to help qualifying households build their own homes. And then after realizing the popularity of the program, a supplementary EC $120,000 was approved and transferred into the department for 3 additional persons, totaling 8. Madam Speaker, a special program was then created, and a further EC $220,000 was used for special rehabilitation grants under the Montserrat Land Development Authority for persons in dire need. The elderly lady in Davy Hill whose roof was falling in on her, the mother whose roof was leaking badly and creating mold where her kids slept, and 9 other persons who could not afford the critical repairs to their homes. Madam Speaker, some of these people cried for years. An elderly man came to my office and cried literal tears because, like many on this list, he was overlooked by the very same people who claim to be guardians of the poor. But Madam Speaker, the hug that I received from one of these persons is enough gratitude to keep the passion in me burning to do more than just talk, but actually help our people. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, it must be recognized that these grants leverage equity in the private sector, meaning every dollar of government assistance generates additional construction activity in the economy, jobs for tradesmen, revenue for hardware stores, and ultimately a roof over a family's head. I'll go even further, Madam Speaker. Each financial assistance grant utilized to secure a mortgage for a new home yields an economic impact exceeding 10 times its original value. For example, 10 grants allocated towards new builds can result in an injection of over $4 million in the local economy. And Madam Speaker, that is exactly the plan going forward, as I have indicated before. This is the most popular incentive in the ministry, and therefore we will be investing into that. Madam Speaker, what this shows is that the people of Montserrat are not trying to be fully dependent. They are ready and willing to rebuild this island one home at a time. While on the topic of housing, in November 2025, the ministry signed an EC 1.1 million contract with Steel Express Services for phase 1 of social housing construction at Drummond's. That is a new apartment complex block containing 4 one-bedroom units designed for our most vulnerable residents. Madam Speaker, many persons, even our own funding agent, doubted that we could complete that project in the remaining 3 months of the fiscal year. But Madam Speaker, I am pleased to say the earthworks and infrastructure phase, to include the access road, electrical and water installation, drainage and connection to the Drummond's wastewater treatment plant, and most importantly, the building itself, all completed before March 31st. That is a testament to the competency within the ministries and the hard-working nature of our contractors and labourers who worked extended hours to ensure not just the ministry's success, but Montserrat's success. And just like our funded agent did, Madam Speaker, let me give praises to the manager of the Land Development Authority, Mr. Franklin Greenaway, and his team for making sure that we completed that project on time, and may I say, record time. Madam Speaker, I can confirm to this House that the continued build-out of the Drummond's development is moving forward. Additional resources have been secured within the LDA to advance the next phase of construction and will continue direct oversight of this program with the team. Madam Speaker, the people of Montserrat have waited long enough. We are building, and may I dare say that by the end of this fiscal year, more new social housing units will be constructed and completed on the 2 fiscal years of this UA administration than in the entirety of the last 10 years under any other administration. And Madam Speaker, I will stress the word completed. For in this very House, it was stated in a supplementary question to myself that a former government negotiated 15 million. But Madam Speaker, I will ask, where are the houses? Madam Speaker, with only 1.5 million, 10% of that negotiated amount that was boasted upon in this very House, this administration has completed earthworks, installed utilities, communication, electricity, water, sewage, and Madam Speaker, most importantly, 4 persons will be housed in climate-resilient housing on a site that is ready for the continued build-out of more homes for our people. That, Madam Speaker, is the difference between what we often term politics and the actual execution that our people deserve. To continue, Madam Speaker, Program 305, Housing Policy and Support Services. This has been allocated EC 647,000 in recurrent funding. Dedicated staff members are responsible for administering the Housing Assistance Program, which continues to offer financial assistance grants of EC 40,000, material grants of EC 40,000, and home improvement grants of EC 10,000 to residents who meet the eligibility criteria. And Madam Speaker, I'm listing these things within the House so that the people listening know that there's help available within the ministry. Because this targeted support enables the qualified individuals and families to improve their housing conditions and access needed resources. In addition to recurrent funding, Madam Speaker, the Housing Construction and Rehabilitation allocation provides an additional EC 578,200 in capital. This investment furthers the ongoing efforts to expand the island's housing stock, ensuring that more Montserratians have access to safe and adequate homes. To support the well-being of elderly residents, the corrective maintenance of ward and support units is funded through a new spent allocation of EC 100,000. This measure ensures that those in assisted living environments continue to reside in dignity and comfort. Madam Speaker, the housing targets for this budget period reflect a commitment to addressing vulnerability and increasing access to housing. Plans include the issuance of at least 10 home improvement grants to vulnerable households, 10 fiscal incentive grants, duty-free concessions, and the construction of 10 new homes under public-private partnership strategies. These initiatives are designed to further reduce the wait list for housing assistance and ensure more residents have access to safe, adequate housing by the end of the forward estimated periods. Lands, physical planning, and the environment. And then we title this, Madam Speaker, Modernizing Land Administration. Program 302 receives $831,500, a significant increase from the EC $624,000 approved last year. This increase reflects the funding of critical posts to include Director of Land Management and a database officer. These, Madam Speaker, are essential to modernizing our land services, and the modernization is already underway. This year, the department implemented GNSS, Global Navigation Satellite Systems, and that technology has delivered a 30 to 40% reduction in survey processing time. Faster surveys, Madam Speaker, means faster approvals. Faster approval means faster construction, faster investment, and faster development for Montserrat. The department achieved 100% completion of all government priority survey requests within required timelines. These included surveys of the proposed netball court rehabilitation, the prison, and other key national infrastructure projects. It has increased the digitization of land and survey records, and one staff member is progressing towards professional certification in surveying and mapping sciences. Madam Speaker, all of this was achieved while maintaining full operational output despite staffing constraints, and that's a testament to the professionalism and dedication of the team. Madam Speaker, revenue from land-related activities is projected at EC $623,000 from stamp duty, registration fees, survey fees, and lease income, making lands our single largest revenue generation program within the ministry. Physical planning, Madam Speaker. Let me show you a number that I think speaks for itself. Madam Speaker, the physical planning unit set a target of 12 buildings complying with enhanced climate change adaptation standards for this year. The actual result was 131 buildings. That is not a modest overperformance. Madam Speaker, that is a testament to not just the department and its building code, but actually our builders working together to deliver houses that meet or exceed the standards for climate change adaptation. This matters, Madam Speaker, because every one of those 131 buildings is more resilient to hurricanes, more resilient to seismic activity, and more aligned with sustainable development standards. In a region, Madam Speaker, battered by climate events, Montserrat is building to survive. The unit also developed a data sharing policy for interagency GIS collaboration, achieving budget execution of 92.5%, and is progressing legislative amendments to the Physical Planning Act, the Building Code, and the Electrical Installation Act to embed requirements for digital plan submissions, environmental protection, renewable energy use, and climate resilient accounting for the changing environment, and also, Madam Speaker, more importantly, to bring more efficiency to the service. Program 303, Madam Speaker, therefore receives EC $690,000 for the continued delivery of these services. Environmental stewardship, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the British Overseas Territory harbors over 90% of the United Kingdom's total biodiversity. That is a fact I stated at the launch of the Montserrat's first National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan in December 2024, and it bears repeating in this House. Program 304, Environmental Management, receives EC $998,000. Our Department of Environment, Madam Speaker, conducts annual avifauna surveys covering 125 sampling points, monitors the mountain chicken population, patrols 2,850 acres of protected forests, and manages our Center Hills protected area. I also want to draw this House's attention, Madam Speaker, to the UK Blue Belt Programme, the United Kingdom's flagship marine conservation initiative for the overseas territories. Montserrat waters hold significant marine biodiversity, and through the Blue Belt, we are working to strengthen marine spatial planning, improve fisheries management, and protect critical marine habitats. This program is an expression of the UK's responsibility towards the extraordinary marine environment in its overseas territories, and Montserrat is an active participant in ensuring our waters are sustainably managed for future generations. For the first time, Madam Speaker, Montserrat will be an active part of the UK Blue Belt program, opening up the avenue for increased investment into our blue economy. I'm pleased to say that we have signed the MOU with the Blue Belt team and should, in the very, very near future, Madam Speaker, start seeing the fruits of this collaboration for everyone involved in Montserrat's blue economy, especially our fishermen. Madam Speaker, the RSPB biosecurity program, with EC 210 in capital, continues our fight against invasive non-native species. The DEFRA-funded management of invasive fire ants receives $18,300, and the JNCC Coral Reef Monitoring Program receives EC 50,000. Madam Speaker, just to add to the context of how some of these programs have helped Montserrat, our national bird, the oriole, was downlisted from critically endangered to vulnerable in 2016. That is a conservation success story that reflects commitment. Madam Speaker, since 2012, Montserrat has received over £4.24 million for Darwin Plus conservation projects. This budget ensures we continue to be worthy stewards of that investment and that trust. Now, the budget in numbers, Madam Speaker. Let me summarize the final picture for Vote 30. Total expenditure for 2026-2027 is EC 11.8 million, comprising EC 9.3 in recurrent expenditure and EC 2.5 in capital. Recurrent expenditure represents a net increase of 425,000 over the previous year's approved estimates, driven by personal investment in land administration and youth affairs and sports, the summer program expansion, increased travel to support training, and the warden support unit's maintenance allocation. Revenue is projected at 1.37 million, sourced from landholding license, stamp duty, land registry fees, agricultural receipts, and other departmental income. Capital expenditure of EC 2.5 million is largely donor funded, reflecting our ability to leverage partnerships with ECCB, FCDO, RSPB, Darwin, and other partners to deliver results well beyond what our recurrent budget alone could achieve. I want to note that our capital program declined significantly in the forward years. And I just wanted to note that because I know the opposition will be looking at the budget. It will decline, you will see it decline to EC 331,000 in 2027 and 2028, and EC 80,000 in 28-29. Madam Speaker, this does not represent defunding. It simply represents the reflection of completion of current project cycles and not a reduction either in the ministry's ambition. We will continue to pursue new partnerships and funding streams to maintain the pace of capital investment. And Madam Speaker, so these figures only represent the forecast of currently approved figures and the implementation cycles. Madam Speaker, before I close, I want to place on record my sincere thanks to my permanent secretary, Mrs. Daphne Castle, and to the directors and staff across every department in the ministry. Those are agriculture, fisheries, lands and survey, the registry department, physical planning, GIS, environment, housing, and youth affairs and sports. I also want to extend my sincere gratitude to our statutory body, the Montserrat Land Development Authority and its staff, and the members of the various boards and committees which also comprise our ministry. Madam Speaker, the numbers I have presented today are not the work of one minister. They are the product of dedicated public servants and private sector individuals who constantly go above and beyond in service to the people of Montserrat. Madam Speaker, I know the Premier spoke about his web and the lion, but we too see the ministry as a web, a network where each person is equally vital and not just a system where the minister sees himself as the head. Madam Speaker, the staff will tell you that in our meetings, I make it a purpose to never actually sit at the head of the table, because I want everybody to actually actively immerse themselves into the meeting as an equal part. On that note, I will say that I am proud to serve alongside the team. Madam Speaker, permit me a few other acknowledgements. I wish to thank our funding partners whose continued support makes much of what I have outlined today possible. From agriculture to housing to the programs that uplift our young people. I also want to personally thank the Financial Secretary and the entire team at the Ministry of Finance for their steady financial guidance and the support they have extended to the ministry. Madam Speaker, sometimes I would send a WhatsApp message at 10:30 and he would respond, so I have to personally thank him. Madam Speaker, I also want to place on record my gratitude to the Honourable Attorney General and her team, on whom we rely constantly for counsel. Madam Attorney General, we know that we are constantly sending you a lot of work, but I must say you have never failed to respond when you're called upon, so thank you. To my colleagues in the United Alliance, I say thank you for the solidarity, the shared purpose, and the discipline we bring to this work every single day. I wish to actually make special mention of Jensen Skerritt and Keith Roy DeBay Mawson, whose advocacy for our people, their loyalty, and tireless commitment to this movement deserve public recognition. Madam Speaker, to the ZGB Radio Montserrat and its dedicated staff, and in particular, I would say Basil Chambers, thank you for your constant support and providing through the What's on Your Mind program, a platform where the people of this country can speak and be heard. Madam Speaker, I would just say democracy is healthier because of the work they do. And finally, Madam Speaker, most importantly, the people of Montserrat, thank you. It is your constant encouragement, constructive criticism, and overall belief in my abilities that is pushing me to be the person that I am today. Madam Speaker, I am a product of this island because I was raised by this nation. In closing, Madam Speaker, I began this contribution with my father's words. Let me close with my own. When the Soufriere Hills volcano erupted in 1995, it took from us our capital, our farmland, our homes, and for many, their reason to stay. Our population fell from over 12,000 to under 4,000, to the point that people said Montserrat was finished. Madam Speaker, I'm here today to say they were wrong. Today we are producing nearly 100,000 pounds of vegetables and ground provisions a year, the highest on record post-volcano. 2 women are farming full-time, and the ministry is currently propagating trees to create orchards on land that is currently designated as the exclusion zone. A young man from this very island ran at the World Championships in Tokyo. Our football team is in the World Cup qualifiers. We are signing export agreements with Canadian partners and delivering speeches at continental summits. We have helped over 35 families with housing grants and are building new homes at Drummond's. We are protecting our biodiversity, our marine environment through the Blue Belt, and investing more in our young people. Madam Speaker, this government is giving the people of Montserrat a new degree of confidence to invest in themselves, invest in housing, to invest in agriculture, to rebuild this island. We were once a gem of the Caribbean, the true meaning of the Emerald Isle. Madam Speaker, that gem will shine again. Madam Speaker, the plans of this government are a true conviction that Montserrat's best days are not behind us. They are being built right now, in our fields, in our greenhouses, on our playfields, in our schools, and in the homes we are constructing for our people. Madam Speaker, there's a joke that I often share with our Premier. And I often tell him the reason why we get along so well is because he often reminds me of my father. And that is, Madam Speaker, don't worry, I'm mainly talking about the decisiveness and the respect that they command with their presence alone. I figured he would remind me that, not the other things, but I'll leave that for another day. But Madam Speaker, there's something that they also share, and that is a passion and a desire to help people, to see people prosper. And I am here to say, Madam Speaker, that that too is within me. Not because I carry my father's name, but because I have seen what this island can do when its people are given the tools, the land, and the belief that they can succeed. Madam Speaker, I did not enter public life to manage decline. I entered it to work and to build. And I give this House and the people of Montserrat my word that as long as I hold this or any portfolio, we will keep building. Madam Speaker, as such, I commend Vote 30 of the 2026-2027 budget to this honourable House. Thank you, Madam Speaker.